Okay, first of all, I will just introduce myself. Let me see how many candidates are there. There are many, I think. Participants 197. Okay, should we wait for a minute or so? 200. Okay, so first of all, a very good morning to all of you. I am Dr. Mayank Agarwal, and I am from the Computer Science Department. I joined IIT Patna in July 2018, so it's roughly 4 years for me in 2 months. I did my BTech from Sardar Patel College of Engineering, Bombay. Then directly after my GATE score, I did my PhD. I did my PhD from IIT Guwahati in Wi-Fi security. Then I went to Israel for my postdoctoral studies. I stayed there for 1 year, worked on malware security, and then I joined as assistant professor in IIT Patna. Right, a brief introduction, and I am also the PIC automation. Right, so when you see mails from PIC automation or PIC auto, that is the one I am mailing. So anybody who is interested in doing web-based automation tools, or he's interested in generally web-based stuff, they can always contact me. I have small projects which I usually do. Right now, you must have seen I had mailed for Android, right? So there was some requirement, so I just mailed. Okay, so first things first. So in my class, attendance is not mandatory, right? So you are free to choose, right? Because I will be uploading the lectures on YouTube also, right? Of course, I will record through WebEx, but I usually record through a third-party website, a third-party tool, and I put them on YouTube, right? So there is no need to write good mornings in the chat. There is no need to write your roll numbers in the chat. For me, attendance does not matter at all. Your performance will be judged on the basis of quizzes that I will take, and I will not take surprise quizzes. I will inform you the timing and the thing of the quizzes. For quizzes, there will be never a theory question. It will be just predict the output, right? So we will have a code snippet and you will have four options and you need to choose the correct option. So there is no rote learning in my course, right? So no attendance, you are free. I will not catch you that you are not sitting the lectures. I know online setting lectures online is usually tough, right? So after the lecture is recorded, I upload them on YouTube so you can watch in your free time, right? Now that I will email you all the things, right? So frankly, it is my first lecture today, so I just need to set up few things. And in this class, I will mail you today. Yesterday, I just forgot. So we will do kind of a live coding, right? I will share the codes with you before the lecture, so that while I am teaching, you can also execute the code on your systems, right? So for that, a few steps are required that I will share with you on the email. So don't worry, all the information will be there, right? I think Saurav sir had last taught you arrays, right? Functions is still not started. Okay, till there we have it. Okay. Will we have a quiz before 17th? No. Your first quiz will be after the midsem exam, probably the week following it or the week next to it, right? So don't worry, no quizzes before midsem, right? And most of the things I will actually talk to Dr. Saurav, uh, because I have only three classes, right? I think no, I will have exams are beginning 17th, right? Okay. Okay, then I will give you a reliever. Probably will not take a quiz before the midsem because the next week will be too hectic for all of you. Right? So we will have after midsems. Okay, so let me first share my screen one, and this. Right? If you have any doubts and all, please interrupt me in between. And I hope you can see my screen. Okay, you are sharing the screen. Screen is visible. Recorder is on. So many things to be seen when we are teaching online. Okay, right, and okay, let me just increase the font size here. Font size, let me keep 18. 18 also appears a bit less. 22. Let us see how does 22. Guys, this font size is good. Okay, how do I see? How do I minimize this thing? Control Shift Z. Anyways, it remains. It's okay. So guys, so what I do in my course is I show you a live demo of a code, and then we execute the code, right? And after the execution, we actually see, what is happening and why. Right? Let me just do a PDF viewer. Yes. Yeah. In the last year, when I showed, I had a special lecture only on how to do the basic debugging, right? How do you add the breakpoints? How do you debug the code? How do you see the variables? So at what point do you see? If you start pointers, then usually the breakpoints are required. Without the pointers, you can actually, I mean, VS Code actually provides you with the debug functionality, but that we will see in another lecture. Let me just check here, functions. Okay, just a slide. And don't worry, everything which I teach, which I take in the class will be shared with you. So there will be nothing like I keep it to myself. Okay, so first of all, why functions are required, right? So let us see a very simple code first, right? This is a very simple code. Okay, int main. So let us return 0. RETUR. Probably from tomorrow or day after tomorrow, I will just send you the instructions so that you can get the codes synchronized on your machine also. Right? I will just send the instructions by today. Okay. So I have a program here which is int main, right? Float. I'm taking a variable which is the name as input number, and I'm entering this printf enter some number for finding the square, right? This program is for finding a square of a number. I do a scanf. Since I'm taking float value, I am having percentage f as the access specifier. If it is integer, you can give percent %d, percent %i, both work, and ampersand input number, right? Then I'm defining a new variable which is float square, just to store the square of the number. And how do you compute the square of a number? You just write the same number multiply by itself, and then I'm just printing it. So this is a very basic program, kind of the first program that can be shown in first class, right? So now just let me execute this code, right? So when I run the code, so guys, I somehow this, I'm just checking whether I can. So let us insert the number 9, and you can say the square of the number 9 is 81. Because it was a float number, it is showing 00000. So let me just try whether I can increase the font size. I'm not sure about this. Git bash, git prompt, configure terminal settings. Font size, good. Now it is better. So VS Code is good. It allows you to search. So let me again run the code. Right, enter some number for finding the square. Let's say I enter 6, and it shows me square of the given number 6 is 36. Right. So this was a routine execution that you might be doing till now. Right. Now what happens when you define a function? Right. So now first of all, why do you require function? Right. It helps you make the code more modularized. Right. For example, you have your scientific calculators that you are using. So every scientific calculator has more than like 700 or 800 functions that they say, and you note the term functions, right? They say they have more than functions, 800 functions. Now just imagine this is a number for computing square, right? Let's say if I'm writing a function to let's say add, right? Float add is equal to, let's say I'm adding the number with itself. So this is another code. So now imagine for 800 functions, and some programs may be as complex as multiplying two matrices, right? So they will take some few number of lines. So it is not a good habit that you write all the codes in the same main function, right? You don't write all the codes in the main function. It is not a good practice. So what you do, you make functions for it. A very good analogy that I can show you with this is, for example, when you were studying JE or from the school days, right? You had a bookshelf, right? Where you keep your books, right? You keep your textbooks in one shelf, you keep your homework books in another shelf, you keep your reference books in another shelf, you keep your novels in another shelf. So the advantage is the moment you know, okay, I want to read a novel, you know, okay, it is kept on the shelf number 3 or the third shelf, right? Now just imagine if you keep all the things mixed up, right? You keep all your reference books, textbooks, homework books, and shelves like stack one after the other. So it will be so cumbersome to find out, okay, which is the novel, which is the textbook. A similar kind of analogy can be established for functions, right? So now let me remove this line, right? So this is will be a very small example, and now I will tell you how a function works and operates, right? So let me just show you float square. Okay. Oh, now integer multiply I and j. Okay, so let me just define a file here which is stdio file, new file, control s, functions 1.1.c, right? So now you can see I have a program here which is for multiplying two numbers, right? I will explain each of the terms one by one. So, don't worry about how things are working, right? So first we will see the output and then we will just check on how things are happening, right? So just forget this line which I have written here as function declaration. Just forget this line, right? So I have an integer main. I am defining three variables, I, j, and result. I am asking the user to enter two numbers to multiply, and I take two numbers as input, I and j. Right? This is clear till now. And then for result, I am calling it. So for example, let me just comment out here. I will just say result is I into j, right? So let us see the output for this program because this has no functions, right? This has no function. This is just a routine standard program, right? So let me just run the code. Oh, sorry guys. Oh, the program name saved was 1.1 and it is assuming the extension as 1.1.c. Function 1, this is multiply.c. So let me just, okay, so it is asking enter two numbers to multiply. So let's say I'm entering 5 and 3 and it says the result of multiplication is 50. So just like the previous code, this is the same code. And now we will see how can I do the same thing using a function. And then we will see what is the benefit of function. See, if you have a one line code, it is better to write in the main itself. But it is always good to start with something of a hello world kind of stuff, right? So now let me just comment this line. And now I have a line here which says result is equal to multiply and round parenthesis and I'm passing I and j, right? I will explain you each and everything what is passing of I and j and everything, right? So first I will just execute this code as it is, right? Let me run the code. So you can see it is again asking me enter two numbers to multiply. I am again entering 5 and 3. So you can see the same result is coming. The result of multiplication is 50, right? So good. So we got the correct answer. Now we come across what is a function and why do you define a function, right? So we will see it step by step, right? So we will see this thing at the last, even though we place it at the beginning, right? So now let us see what I did. See, in the previous case, I just wrote multiplication of the two numbers, I into j. Right now it is commented, right? Now what I'm doing here, I'm saying result is equal to multiply I and j. Sorry, multiply I and j. So you could see that in scanf, I am actually taking two variables, I and j. In my case, it was 5 and 3, right? Basically, I was equal to 5 and j was equal to 3. Right? Till here it is clear. So basically what will happen, this is a function call. Let me just write here. This was a function call. What was the value of I? I was 5 and j was 3. So internally these two variables will be replaced. That is what that happens when the program actually executes, right? Now what happens? Now you can see here I am calling a function multiply. Now how do you identify key, okay, what is a function and what is not a function? So this is my drawing board. Right, so let me just show you here. So how to identify a function. right? So first of all, function basically means it's a block of code to execute a task. That's it. It's just a block of code to execute a task. And how to identify? It is name, and it will have a round parenthesis. So let me change the pen color. It will have round parenthesis, right? So you have used here. Now let us see. Till now you must have studied. So for example, if you can see, the round parentheses are here with the main. So main is also a function, right? Now where do you see the round parenthesis? You can see in printf also there is a round parenthesis. So printf is also a function, right? So printf is also a function, right? Similarly, you can see scanf also has these things, the round parenthesis. So scanf is also a function, right? And now you will see multiply also has round parenthesis, right? But now the difference is this printf, this scanf, and the main. As I said you, right? It is a block of code to execute a task. But you can see I am not defined what scanf does, what printf does. That system already knows. How the system knows it? It knows from the stdio.h which you are including. At this place, you actually define what is the main, what is the printf, what is the scanf, right? But now when I define something like multiply, the system does not know what does multiply mean, right? It is just like, for example, when you study English language and you first time encounter a new word, you do not know what the sentence means. Why do you do not know? Because you do not know what that particular word means, right? So if I say, okay, get me an ice cream, and if I don't know what is an ice cream, how would I know what to actually get, right? The same thing. So when I say how to identify a function, you just see the round parenthesis, right? So now you see multiply has a round parenthesis. So that means it is a block of code. And now the compiler thinks, okay, I do not know what is multiply. So please write the definition of it. Definition means, for example, what this multiply function will do, right? So now you can see this is the main part. You can see this line. The main is starting from 6 and ending at 17, right? This is the main part. So what happens? Any function, right? Main is a function. It starts with a curly braces, ends with a curly braces. Not mandatory. If it is a single line, it can just execute in the same line itself. That we see later. Now what happens when you define a multiply function, right? So what happens here, you can see I'm defining here something called as int multiply, int a and int b, right? So I will explain what is happening here. So just let me come back to the drawing board. I will explain it here, right? So what we are doing in the main, we are saying, so pen color is black. So this is the main, and I am writing result is equal to, change the pen color, result is equal to multiply, and I am passing I comma j, right? And since you are doing it in the first lecture, let me also keep this as I comma j just for your understanding, and then I will explain you why this I and j even does not matter, right? Okay. Class, almost 20 minutes into the class, so let us take a break for 5 minutes, and let's return at 10:25 as per the clock, right? Let us return at 10:25. Let me just check my cell phone for the timing. Yeah, it is still 10:21 because we should have small breaks between the lectures or it gets too overloaded, right? So I am pausing the video and the record. Okay, class. So back. So we were discussing what were functions and how do we call functions. So again, multiply function followed by a round parenthesis is the function call basically. And now what happens, right? So you can see here I'm passing two things, multiply I and j, okay? And now the same thing, if you see, multiply function is the same name here, and I'm just writing here int I and int j. I will explain you why I have written int I. If you see the original data type of I and j, right, you can see here they are of type integers, right? Since it is of type integer, I am specifying here int I and int j, right? Why this int I'm specifying, I will just explain you in a while, right? So now what happens in the code block, I will just explain you, right? So what you have written here, you have written multiply I comma j, and in the lower portion, you let me have a changed ink. I'm having a blue ink now. So this is having int multiply int I and int j, right? And you have here written I into j, right? In brackets, I into j. Fine. So now here what happens is, for example, let me keep another color. So initially you had passed 5 comma 3 as your inputs in I into j, right? So when you define a function, so for example, you are passing here two parameters, right? You are passing I and j. So when you basically this is the function definition, just don't go by the terms, it is an easy concept. So what happens, this value of I gets copied here, and this value of j copied here. So if you are taking 5 parameters in a function, it will be I, J, K, L, M. It will be I, J, K, L, M, right? So what happens here? 5 comes here and 3 comes here, right? So what will be the result? 5 into 3, which is equal to 15, right? The result is computed as 15. And now what I'm saying here, I'm saying return 5. Yes. So when I'm saying 5 into 3 is 15 and I'm saying return, right? So what it will return? It will return the value 15. And then this int comes into the picture, that whatever this function is returning, right? Whatever this function is returning is of data type integer, right? So you saw we had used two integers. The multiplication of two integers will also result in an integer. And this integer basically is the return type, that this function will return a value which is an integer type. Now, when I'm returning something, where do I return it? Right? So, for example, when you order stuff from Amazon and you have a return request, that guy basically comes and returns it to the same place from where he had picked up from the warehouse. Right? So, returning is to the same place where you were actually sending the Amazon packet. In this case, it's a function. So, where was the function called in this case? It was called on line number 11. So line number 11 called the multiply function, passing 5 and 3, which eventually got copy pasted to 5 and 3 here, got it multiplied. Now it says return. So where it should return? It should return back to line number 11, right? Now I will tell you what happens in the backend. See, we computed 5 into 3 as 15, and then we did a return. Return basically went back to this line, right? So eventually what happens, this thing happens, the compiler, or when the code executes, what it does, when you return 15, this function, because see, the function is executed and returned us 15, right? So upon execution, now the result value will become 15, right? Got the idea? So what happens, see, this is a function to do a task, right? Multiply function does all the tasks. Eventually it is 5 and 3, so it does 5 multiplied by 3, which is 15, and then I am returning 15 here. So when I return 15, internally what happens, this becomes, because the task is done, this becomes as 15, right? This becomes as 15, and then I'm printing, which is again the value, the same value, which is 15. So again, let me just enter 5 and 3. So the result of the multiplication is 1, 5, 15, right? I hope this point is clear to you, how the functions work and how the jump is going on, right? So these two are the same thing which are being passed into here, I and j, and then you return some values. whatever it is. I plus j will become an addition function, I minus j becomes a subtraction function, right? So now the one more thing which remains here to see is that when you're calling a function, you specify a name and number of parameters. You can have as many, even you can have a function without a parameter. We will see that in the subsequent lectures, right? So a good idea is, you just copy paste this line and remove the semicolon and specify what is the data type for I and j. So what is the data type of I and j? Both are int. So you just write int and int, right? What this function will return? It will return the multiplication, and the multiplication of int and int is also int. So you just write int multiply, and then you start a opening curly brace and a closing curly brace, right? This is how you basically define any function, right? Now let us do one thing. In the same variable, right, let me just type int add. I'm showing you a new function, right? So add is equal to, let's say we have a function which is the name add, and we are passing same I comma j, right? We are passing int add, and add is equal to add function. So what I said, whenever you are defining a function, you just copy paste this. Order does not matter. Remove the semicolon. This is a syntax, right? So removing the semicolon is no logic, but just a syntax. Basically the logic is a semicolon basically specifies the end of a sentence, but we are not ending, right? We are having so many things. Just like you don't put a semicolon towards the end of a for loop, right? Now if you realize, for loop is also a function. For has round parentheses, and we have to specify what it will return. It will return I plus j. I plus j both are integers, so it will return the type integer, right? This is done. And one final thing is, just copy this line, entirely and paste it before your main function, and I will again tell you what is the logic for this. Why do you need to paste, right? So, and let me just write the result of add is, we are storing the result into add, right? So let me just clear the window, enter two numbers to multiply, 5 and 3, right? So result of multiplication is 15 and the result of add is 8, right? So just I made the slash n, so it would appear a bit nicely. So result of multiplication is 15 and result of addition is 8, right? Same things I copy pasted. So you can see whenever you are writing a function, how the things become very simplified. You took the input only once and you are just calling the functions. You are again calling the function, right? So however many times I execute this code, my code length will not increase. And for example, let's say for example, by mistake, I made this error while writing a code, right? So while adding two numbers, there is always a one which is being added. So it will give a wrong result, right? So let us execute this code. Let me just clear the screen first. So it is saying two numbers to multiply, let's say 5 and 3. So now you can see the result of multiplication is 15, which is correct. 5 into 3 is 15, but the result of addition is coming as 9. So I know that, okay, there is some issue with my addition function. So the advantage here is, in the main code, I did not even look at the function which is multiplying two numbers. I know that this answer is correct, right? So what I can do, I can only just see the addition function which is showing me an error. So now just imagine if your class is writing a function for scientific calculator that has more than 800 functions, right? So what you will define, function 1, function 2, function 3, up to 800 functions. Now when you're testing that particular amount of code, you will just check each of them one by one. So whatever the functions are giving correct answers, you can just say that, okay, no need to test more this function. But those functions which are giving wrong values, you need to just come to that function and just see, okay, you see, oh, I have added one here extra, so I remove this. So this is the advantage of the function, right? So it will help you debug your code easily. Second, it actually modularizes your code. So if you're doing a group project having like 5 students together, and each of them is writing 10 functions. So you don't have the access to the main file at one time. So what do? You just say to one friend, okay, you make the main function, and the rest of the four can define individual functions so that they can write all of their functions in an independent fashion. And when they write their functions in an independent fashion, what happens? Then you can just compile the code, right? You can take your friends, for example, this is friend one's code, this is friend's two code, and you just copy paste here. That's it. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so the last thing that remains here is, why do we copy this line and place a semicolon here, right? So this process basically is known as function declaration. And now what is the importance of the function declaration, right? So function declaration actually helps. So for example, what happens when you compile your code or run your code? The code execution begins from top to bottom, right? So when it is reading your code, right? See, as I said, main is a function, printf is a function, scanf is a function. The compiler automatically knows what it means by main, printf, and scanf. But the compiler does not know what is the meaning of multiply because it does not have the definition for it. This is your custom function. So when we say this particular line and the compiler is compiling the code from top to bottom, we are actually saying, see, you may encounter a function called multiply, right? So don't throw any compilation error. Assume that it will be defined towards the end of main. So don't throw any error. Same is for the add. We will say that, okay, when you compile your code, my dear compiler, don't try to throw an error. I have defined the add function after the main. So what happens? The compiler comes main. Okay, I know what is main. Printf, I know what is this function. Inbuilt. Scanf, I know what is this function. It says multiply. Oh, I do not know what is multiply function. But since you have declared this function, it knows that, okay, as of now on line number 12, right? On line number 12, I do not know what the function multiply does. But since my programmer has written this line, I am anticipating that in future lines it will be defined. So I will not throw any error. That is the work of function declaration, right? So that is why function declarations are used. So now I hope you get this point. So the best idea is to first define a name of a function, then just copy paste this thing here, define the data types and the return type, right? Do your logic and just copy paste this line, paste here and give a semicolon, right? Another tip here is, for example, let's say if you don't want to write these lines, right? See, I'm commenting now these lines. So the another way you can do is, then you define these above the main. So this is also a standard practice, nothing bad or nothing worse. Usually if you see Python and Java and all, they have this philosophy only. They define all the functions above the main. So now what happens when the program is being executed from top to bottom, the compiler says, okay, I don't understand this, but it appears to be a function, right? Again, I don't understand this, but this appears to be a function. So before executing main, it has already encountered this while processing, right? So in this case, you do not need this function declaration. Let me just execute so that you can see, right? Two numbers to multiply, 5 and 3. So you can see it has executed successfully. So nothing like this is wrong or this is right. Both are equivalent approaches. In the books, when you see, you will have these kind of definitions, right? So with these kind of definitions, it's a good practice to follow the standards, right? And it is a good practice, right? Because over time, when you have many number of functions, you can have a list also. Okay, what functions have been completed, what are defined, and all those things. Of course, comments you already know, so always better to define what the function does. So for example, integer multiply, this function multiplies two numbers and returns the result, right? Now one more thing is which was remaining here is when you are taking input as I and j. See, while you are in the main, I and j have a scope. We will see the scope later on, but I'm just explaining you the very basics here. In the scanf, you took I and j as an input, right? You took I and j as an input, and then you are passing it to the function as I and j. If you remember our notebook here, so I had written here that I and j is copied, right? And this is the multiply function, right? So copied is here. You can assume this like a Xerox, right? So what do I mean by that is that, for example, the values of variable I and j are actually copied into these particular variables, right? Now see, whenever you're taking a Xerox from a friend and you do any kind of scribbling on the Xerox, the original copy is not touched, right? Whenever you do any scribbling on the Xerox, the original copy is not touched, right? Same is the case here. So for example, let me do one thing. Instead of, see, I am calling I and j, right? So let me call here a and b, right? So it is showing an error a and b, fine. And as I said, whatever line is here, okay, it has automatically taken, the VS code is too intelligent. It has taken a and b, right? And similarly, let me just keep it a and b, and this is a plus b. Let me just write this code 5 and 3. You can see the results are still identical, right? Now you may say, okay sir, we have taken I and j here, how does it come to know that this is a and b? Again, the logic is same, right? Now instead of I and j, now it is a and b. But if you see something which is getting copied, right? Something which is getting copied. So this value of phi is copied to a, and this value of I is copied to b, right? Since I'm copy pasting the value of I and j into a and b respectively, it does not matter, right? Because anyways it's a copied value, right? Values of I gets copied to a and j to b. Since the values are getting copied, whether I do multiplication of a and b, even if it was I and j, right? In the previous case it was I and j, even if it is I and j, this I and j represent different memory location than this I and j, that we will look when we do pointers, right? Right now you just remember that if you want to keep it simple, you just copy paste this I and j like it was. Let me just do undo. Right? So I'm keeping it I and j because it is a first lecture, so I don't want to complicate too many things, right? So we have learned two things here. Multiply is a function. How do you know it's a function? You have round parentheses, fine. And then when you call a function, however, if you are passing 10 parameters, it should have 10 parameters here. If it has 9, error. If it has 11, error. So the syntax should match. We should have to specify a return type. Return type can also be a void, right? Void means the function is returning nothing. If you are returning something, for example, if you are returning something, then wherever you are calling the function, it should have a variable on the left hand side. Why? Because when you are returning something, there should be something to catch that value, right? That 15 needs to be captured in some variable. And just for example, so this is a function definition because you define what the function does here. This is the function call because you're calling the function, and this is the function declaration that you are saying the compiler that, okay guy, I have a function known as multiply, so please don't pop an error the moment you see this particular word, right? So guys, it's 10:45. Let us take a break for 5 minutes and then we return at 10:50. Okay, doubts are welcome. Okay, so she has a good question. I think Siva, I think your doubt is clear. This was also a good question. Why are we giving quotes in printf and not in multiply? Right? So printf is a function that takes quotes or a character or a string as its input type, and our multiply function takes numbers. So numbers you don't specify into quotes. Yeah. So implicitly scanf takes everything as characters only, right? But then later does a conversion based on the data type of I, right? Every input basically is taken as a string. Compilers take everything as characters only, right? If you have done class on Ascii, have you done or no? I'm not sure. Do you know the Ascii numbers from 0 to 255? Ascii. Ascii is the American Standard Code. Yes. So if you see nine, yeah, yeah, we will see one another class on which we have functions into Ascii, right? So basically, Ascii is what the system actually sees, right? So if you see the numbers from 0 to 9 are from Ascii 97 to 108. Okay. So basically, when you are entering number 4, it is taking Ascii as 100 in the backend. So that will be a discussion for a separate class. Okay, implicit conversion I think has been taught in the previous classes only. It should have been taught. If not, I will cover it. Right. Okay. Khushi has a doubt saying if a function is declared before int main, but it is not defined after int main, so will the compiler throw an error? Right. If it is declared, okay, so function I'm declaring, but it is not defined after int main. See, if you are declaring the function and if you are not even calling the function, then there is not an issue. It will only be a warning. So let us do one thing. I am defining an add function, right? But I'm not, and you don't define it. Okay, just let me read your. If a function is declared before the int main, okay, we have declared, but if it is not defined after int main, okay, so we have defined it. It is not defined after int main. Oh, you are not defining also. Let me comment this out. So it is as good as not defined. So compiler will throw out an error at the line where it was called inside, or it will at the end of the code. No, it will be, the error will be at the line at which it is defined, right? So this is exactly the case you are meaning. I have declared add, I have not defined. It is as good as I can do a control X here, but I am calling an add function. So this will throw a compilation error at line number 19. Let us see in real time. Let me clear the screen, right click, run the code. See, it is returning an error status. Let us see the error status. Oh, so many windows this WebEx opens. I don't understand what is the logic. See, undefined reference to add function, right? That means it does not know what to do with add function, right? And it is returning an exit status one. It should actually specify the line number also. This may be some settings in VS Code that I will have to see. It should actually show the line number, which line number it is actually defining. So this basically will throw an error on this particular line number, right? So Khushi, you got your doubt solved, or there is some doubt, right? Okay, that's all. So it's 10:55 class. So we could do only one program today, but I hope, see, this is the way I will teach for the entire semester, right? So I will just show live codes from tomorrow onwards. You will have the live codes with you also. So I will tell the steps how to, install VS Code, install these libraries, plugins, and execute your code. See, programming is all about practice and seeing what is happening, and based on the output then you understand, okay, oh, this is why this must have happened, right? Because these are the things you cannot go inside the compiler and see. So I will never have any slides or ppts. I see that as a boring method of teaching. Programming is to be taught practically, right? So guys, today we are ending the lecture. I will upload the lectures on YouTube. Thank you all. It had 400 plus participants, and as against, don't worry about attendance. It carries zero weightage, right? It will be uploaded on YouTube also, so in case you miss the lecture, you are always free to watch the lectures on YouTube. Okay. Okay, that I will send you in the email. Can you provide the? Acha, my codes. Yeah, I will provide all the details by today night, right? So there are few things that you need to install and few things you need to configure. That step-by-step tutorial I will actually send to you by tonight, right? I will try my best to send by tonight because we have the BTPs and all those things being done today. So this week is a bit hectic, but I will try my best. So don't worry, you will have the codes. Everything that I have done, I will share with you. Please try to execute the code yourself, right? Programming is something, when you see those things seems very simple and very obvious. So keep trying different things. Like Siva said, if we pass int and then take as float, right? Then try all these things, right? For example, you keep as int and you make the return type as float. See what the errors are coming, right? Your system will never blast on these errors. So just try all these things. It will actually help you learn and see what is happening in the backend, right? Programming is all about trial and error. No coder in the world writes the perfect code in the first go, right? You encounter errors, you learn, and you grow. We can also define function before main function. Yeah, it will surely work, Ronak. If you define it before the main, then you don't even need to declare. You can surely work. If you see codes on Pythons and Java, it is like that. You define all the function, and in the main, you only call functions. Okay, class, you may be having a next class. So I am now stopping the sharing, right? Okay, guys, goodbye. Yeah, bye.